Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we're speaking with Shirley Wantland. Shirley, it's great to have you on the program.
Hi, Van. Thank you. So good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to talk with you, and we're going to be talking about some really important stuff today. Shirley is the co-founder and principal at Recovery Consultants. This is a group that restores hope to individuals and families struggling with mental health and addiction. Shirley works very directly with really a lot of mental health concerns, and we'll talk about some of the exciting things that she's working on in breaking new ground in the area of using psychedelics in that process. And so very, very interesting and innovative stuff. But before we get there, Shirley, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career actually kind of paradoxically in the pharmaceutical world. I did that for a good 8-10 years and then came out to California and got introduced into the world of behavioral health. And I was the right kind of crazy to like it. And I've stayed here. And, really it's helping people in crisis. There's a part of my personality that gets a lot of gratification out of that. I work for this company, really cut my teeth in the industry of addiction and mental health in particular, and started Recovery Consultants 8 years ago with the idea that there should be more resources out there for people. And what we were hearing kind of from therapists and psychiatrists were they would send their clients or patients off to treatment or rehab, and then they would just lose them. I mean, They wouldn't know what happened with them. Where are they? And there's so many of these kind of day-to-day, like connecting the dot things that don't connect. And then we lose the person, right? So that idea kind of stuck with me. And so Recovery Consultants was born with really that intention of helping people integrate what they've learned through therapy and treatment into real life. Because I feel like that was what I was hearing was a missing piece for a lot of clinicians. And we've continued to just evolve over the last, 8 years. And like you said, breaking new ground, super excited about it and excited to share more.
So Shirley, it's an incredibly valuable system and solution that you guys are offering across the board. And certainly, as we'll talk about, very much, I think, an area that is perhaps garnering a lot more focus right now because a lot of people have struggled with mental health and addiction issues over the last several years. But tell me a little bit more about Recovery Consultants and some of these new areas that you guys are working in.
Yeah, I think, with Recovery Consultants in the last 8 years and really working in depthly with people that are really struggling and families that are really struggling. And, there are a lot of people that come to us where we're not the first knock. They've been to quite a few treatment programs, quite a few different providers, and they just haven't found much progress, or they're just kind of stuck back in their ways. And so we guide them. What we do well is finding the available resources and then helping the individuals and families navigate those resources.
Okay.
So I think that I believe that there's an art to this work. It's not an exact science. And in working with people so closely for the 8 years, there was something that was missing. And those of us who work in this field will know what I'm talking about. You feel like you're just beating your head against the wall. You're like, what? There's something that's just, it's the same. What else is there? And it wasn't until, my own personal healing journey with psychedelic medicine, and then kind of, whoa, that just unlocked something that 10 years of therapy hasn't been able to break. And so I thought about that. I'm like, what is that? And why do we not have more of that within this space? And, now a lot more research is coming out. There's, you see stories and headlines now about various psychedelic studies and mental health. So I do feel like it's the next wave
Hmm.
of mental health kind of evolution and treatment. And excited to explore more on that front. I wholeheartedly believe there's a spiritual kind of shamanic medicine
Hmm.
piece that's missing from our traditional mental health and addiction treatment. It's a lot of, AA meetings and, just that seems to be kind of the primary AA
Right.
meetings and therapy. And that works for some, which is great, but it doesn't work for a lot of people. So what do we do with them?
Yeah, no, I really like that. And I like the fact that you're pushing into new areas that perhaps needed a lot more study, a lot more development, and really kind of professionalism added to them and pushing it into new areas. Because I think we all know those people that have pursued very, very traditional forms of ways of dealing with addiction or mental health issues. And certainly it helps, but there are those that still don't seem like they're fully getting what they need. And so finding new ways to develop there is really, really smart. I'm excited to see that develop. But let me change the gears a bit here and
Oh.
ask about the last couple of years, because we've been living through this really quite complicated moment with the pandemic. And man, if you were busy before the last couple of years, Shirley, I bet you were pretty busy over the last two.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me about the last couple of years and the journey that you've been on.
Yeah, in recovery consultants journey, I mean, we have never been busier than we have been in the last 2 years. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that with, the COVID pandemic that's kind of swept through, just like you said, kind of same thing. If you weren't struggling before, you were really struggling. That this pandemic has kind of brought up a lot in people that they've been able to either distract themselves or find other ways around it.
Hmm.
And when you remove all of that and you're just left with yourself and
Mm.
time, oh, that's where you can get in trouble. And so I think that the trend that we're seeing is a lot of people emerging from isolation, a lot more acute, a lot more sick than they would have
Mm.
been otherwise. Sometimes I think we take for granted our day-to-day routine. And although it can be a grind, it's also a form of, accountability. I
Hmm.
think it's a form of showing up. It's, just forcing us something to do something outside of ourselves. And with that piece missing, the past couple of years, people are left to their own devices. And unfortunately, a lot of human devices are not great devices.
Yeah. So, I mean, how were you able to help people when you couldn't see them? And did you do a lot more stuff virtually, or how did that work?
Yes, yes. I think around the industry in general, there kind of before COVID, there was this nothing, you have to do everything in person or it doesn't count. And I was really, grateful for the movement that telehealth and telemedicine has taken during COVID, because that's opened up the doors for a lot more people to seek help. And I don't mean just the people that were seeking help before, but it also opened up to rural areas where maybe you don't have great,
Hmm.
treatment resources or options. So
Hmm.
that really opened the door a lot. So we did a lot of that. It was a lot of over, telehealth kind of help. And we're still seeing taking all the precautions, but seeing people in person when it was needed and warranted.
Yeah, it's been an interesting moment. And thank God that solutions like yours are out there to actually help folks right now. So, I mean, now we find ourselves in 2022, and it's exciting to hear that people are opening their minds to areas like psychedelics to play a role in their recovery process. But I mean, what else do you see for 2022? And what are the other elements that are on the recovery horizon?
I think, psychedelics will take a bigger center stage in the next couple of years as the legalities and policies start changing around psychedelics. I know in Oregon, it's slated to be that psilocybin will be legal probably in 2023 to
Wow.
2024, which is pretty groundbreaking. So I think that will open the door for a lot. So there's a lot still to be seen there. I think within the framework of recovery consultants, what we've shifted to is, yes, there are still traditional modalities that can be helpful for people that are struggling, but we're shifting more into a deep kind of transformational work. And that has felt a lot more aligned with the mission of helping people.
Mhm.
A little bit to the conversation we had in the beginning, I think there's a difference between being sober and being in recovery or healing. I think those are two different things. You can
Right.
white knuckle anything, right, for a certain amount of days and do this. But at the end of the day, how are you showing up in your life,
Right.
in your relationships for you? And I call it, I get a little emotional when I talk about it, but I call it the long journey home, right?
Wow.
I think that we are so disconnected from ourselves with, all the distractions that are available to us these days. And, I think there are many transformative modalities, plant medicines and psychedelics being one of them as a catalyst, but not the only. But I think that's where kind of the real healing takes place, is when we come from a place of connecting to ourselves again and
Mhm.
really being okay with who
Yeah.
we are.
Well, let me ask you a question because I'm curious about this. I feel like the beauty of generations like really millennials, but Generation Y, is that they're so much more open than
Yeah.
older generations in, I guess, not white knuckling it, right? I'm a Gen Xer. Whenever I talk to any of my younger colleagues, I'm always impressed at how able they are to discuss their emotions and their needs and their feelings in ways that I think we were discouraged to do so, right?
Yes.
And we see this kind of world that's developed where we have life coaches. And I know that we have several capabilities in our enterprise that offer those types of services to folks. And I see it across the whole business landscape. I kind of feel like we're getting to a world where people are doing better at offering support, right? But we still
Yes.
seem to have a lot of these challenges. And I guess it's probably where led you to that question of like, what was missing, probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was missing for sure? And to your point, Brant, I mean, I grew up in Oklahoma and Texas. No
Yeah.
one goes to therapy. Like, no one talks about their emotions. You just put on
Right.
your cowboy boots and you just deal with it,
Yeah.
like a real person with grit. And, so to be in this world has been a departure from how I grew up and the cultural and kind of viewpoints that you have. And I think to your point, there are more providers out there offering these sort of services because there's also been a more openness within
Right.
the population, right? And I think some of these newer, younger minds are a lot more adaptable than some of the previous generations of to new experiences and new ways of thinking.
Yeah.
Um, and
That's good.
yeah, it is good, and I think that's one of the things I've seen that in my work with people is it's the fear that holds us back. I mean,
Hmm.
and fear again comes in many, many different forms. It's, anxiety, judgment, self-righteousness, sadness, depression, all of those things really keep us separated and
Right.
apart. And they really hold us back. And it's when we're able to come from a place where we can lead from love that we're able to actually heal. And like I said, connect with, ourselves and connect with one another. And that, I mean, if I would have heard myself, my 15, 14-year-old self say that back in Oklahoma, I'd be like, what the heck is she talking about? It sounds so woo woo.
Right.
But it's true. And I've seen so many lives transform from shifting kind of the way that we operate.
This is great. Well, Shirley, thank you so much for being on Uncaged Day. If someone wanted to learn more about what you're working on at Recovery Consultants, where's the best place to find you?
They can find us on www.recovery-consultants.com. The website has great information and videos just on the services that we provide. There's an intake questionnaire form and ways to get in touch with us there.
Great. Well, we've been speaking with Shirley Wantland. She is the co-founder and principal at Recovery Consultants. We've been talking about the solutions that they have been offering and directing people to help them with mental health and addiction challenges, and some of the ground that she and her colleagues are breaking in the area of using psychedelics in this process. And so very, very exciting stuff in the near future for Shirley and the Recovery Consultants team. And thank you so much for being on UNCAGED today.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.